This episode is brought to you by HASA. Liquid is clearly better. Liquid chlorine is the highest purity, works immediately, has no added cyanuric acid or calcium, and it will leave your pool safe, clean, and clear. And by the Bottom Feeder professional grade battery powered vacuum system. It sucks to clean pools, so cleaning pools sucks less. Get $100 off with code DVB100.
This episode is brought to you by Skimmer, the #1 pool service software in North America. With Skimmer, you can streamline your schedule, grow your revenue, and keep your customers coming back with 5-star service. Whether you're a one-person operation or an established team, Skimmer is your partner in success. Visit getskimmer.com/poolguy to try Skimmer for free for 30 days.
The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show.
Hi, welcome to the Pool Guy Podcast Show. In this episode, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about beating the heat out there. If you do pool service and you're in an area in the summer where it gets to really extreme temperatures, Phoenix, Arizona, the high desert here, and even some parts of other states where you get heat waves where it's over 100 degrees and humidity is really terrible. I'll go over some ways you can try to beat the heat out there. Are you a pool service pro looking to take your business to the next level? Join the Pool Guy Coaching Program. Get expert advice, business tips, exclusive content, and get direct support. From me, I'm a 35-year veteran in the industry. Whether you're starting out or scaling up, I've got the tools to help you succeed. Learn more at swimmingpoollearning.com. Now, I'm the kind of person that wants to do a thorough job at a pool, and I was working one time, and this is many years ago when I was first starting out. I was at a pool, and it was about 105 degrees out. It was about 12 or 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and I was vacuuming the pool. And it so happens that next door, there's a fence, but it was kind of like one of those wrought iron fences, and they didn't really have much separation with their neighbor. You can actually see the other pool, and I would see the other pool guy on occasion. He would see me, and so I was there vacuuming it. I was sweating. I was dying. He came to the pool next door, and then he came over to the fence and said, "Hey, what are you doing? You know, it's way too hot to be vacuuming the pool. In weather like this, you just want to do the minimum. Just skim the pool, brush it." And he said, "No one's back here anyway. No one's going to care. Don't be killing yourself out there doing this." And that was a lesson for me, because then I realized that, you know what, he is right. I mean, if you realize, or if you've been out during a heat wave where it's 105, 110, most people aren't in their backyard. Most people aren't using their pool. And this, of course, was before automatic cleaners, and so I was vacuuming a lot of pools manually. The cleaners I had back then were the Creepy Crawly and the Hayward Navigator, and that was about it. And so it's one of those lessons I learned, that during a heat wave, now, of course, if you're in Arizona and Phoenix, it's 110 for a month. There's not much you can do in that case. You have to eventually do a little bit of pool service, but there are ways around it. And of course, starting as early as possible is something else that I've learned out there, that I get to my first pool when there's a heat wave or when it's really hot, and I'm actually literally sitting in the front of the house until there's enough light to go back there and clean the pool. And I've actually been back there when it was like kind of barely visible. That's probably not the best thing, because then the customer's like, "Hey, what are you doing? How can you even see the pool?" So you want to wait until at least there's some light, but you want to start at the crack of dawn. So that's one key thing you can do to kind of beat the heat. And then you want to, of course, make sure your truck air conditioner is full blast and working. You could put a towel around your neck. I'm not the kind of person that splashes a lot of water on myself when I'm out there, because I feel like that's like kind of the opposite thing that I want. I just want to, kind of get used to the heat in some way, get through cleaning the pool, and then get back to my truck. And so you're going to be working on speed. This is where test strips come in handy. Now, I understand that test strips aren't something that you want to use day in and day out. To test the water, you want to do a reagent or a photometer test, of course, to make sure that you have the parameters and it's balanced. But when it's 110 degrees out, you just want to get through the day as fast as you can. So dipping a test strip in, looking at the reading is perfectly fine in my book, and that's going to save you some time out there. If the pool doesn't have an automatic cleaner, it should have one, because that's going to save you time vacuuming. You should have a vacuum system so that you can spot vacuum a pool rapidly. The bottom feeder is great for that. You can use the Riptide, but it's much faster, in my opinion, than a manual vacuum. And if there's a suction side cleaner in there, you're just getting out the debris that's in there and getting out of there. You also want to try to plan your route, and this may sound kind of strange or kind of hard to do, but it's actually really logical. But you want to set your route up so that you create some shade for yourself on the hottest parts of the day. So the pools that are totally exposed, and there's several of those that are probably on your route where there's no shade trees around it, you want to get those done earlier in the morning. And it may be some backtracking and some going out of your way, but this is important because it's going to save you later in the day. So those pools where there's no shade, do those early in the morning. And then the pools that have natural shade, do those later in the day. And this may save you that day because you're out there and that little bit of shade does help while you're cleaning the pool. And if you can do this, you can, here in my area of California, there's lots of pools with shades, with trees around them, which is good and bad. But there's opportunities to create your route so that you're doing all the brutal, high heat pools that would kill you out there with not a drop of shade in the morning. And then you're doing the pools where there's some shade later in the day. And the Pool Guy Podcast Show has teamed up with UPA to bring you affordable, reliable liability insurance starting at just $64 a month. Get up to $2 million in coverage, and the members of my coaching group get an even lower rate. Protect your business and your peace of mind. Sign up with UPA today by clicking the link in the podcast description. You can also, and this is something that some people have done working in a high desert, they'll go out there, and I don't recommend doing this because my personality wouldn't be able to do this, but they have done this before. They'll go out there and they'll do a half a day. They'll stop like at 11 a.m. and then they'll do like a split shift where they'll go back out again at 5:30 and then finish their route. Again, not my personality to do that, but if it is 110 in the middle of the day from like 11 to 5 o'clock, it may be something to consider, and it's something that has been done before, and people do that. Then they go into the evening and finish the pool route. But for me, I like to get done and be finished early, and so speed is of the essence. Now, of course, you don't want to overdo it and get heat stroke, but you don't want to do anything extra out there that you can avoid, and you want to try to make sure that you're spending as little time as possible at each pool during the major heat wave. And you can always go back and do any kind of touch-up work that needs to be done later when it's cooler. Like for instance, if you're doing some kind of equipment install, I would rather you do that in the morning rather than the afternoon. And you can have a pop-up tent. This may save you as well. If you're doing anything like a filter clean, there's some guys out there that bring a pop-up tent. They can put it up around the equipment, and that way they create their own shade while they're working on it. But you really want to have all the major filter cleanings and anything that you're going to be doing that takes time and that takes you away from cleaning the pools done before the summer. So I always try to schedule my filter cleanings for March and April here in Southern California. And then I'll schedule the second cleaning September, October when it's cooler. Generally it's cooler at those times of year. Sometimes it's not, but it's much better than cleaning a filter in July and August. And so you want to kind of spread those filter cleanings out of the middle of summer. And so in the middle of summer, your main thing is to be cleaning the pools and getting out of there as quickly as possible. Now, one thing that could cause your day to be extremely miserable is if a pool gets algae in it. And so the number one thing that you want to prevent out there as a pool pro in a hot area is spending 10 or 15 minutes brushing algae out of the pool and treating it. I've been there. It's probably the most miserable thing. 100-degree weather, the sun's beating down on you. You have your 6-inch steel brush and you're brushing the pool, trying to dislodge the algae that formed in an outbreak. And this, of course, is a very bad situation for you. You're sweating profusely. You're treating the pool for algae. And you're probably thinking in the back of your head, man, I wish I wasn't doing this. I wish I had prevented it. Now, there are some things that aren't preventable, like the customer turning off the pump and leaving it off for a few days. But there are a lot of things that are preventable. So I think using an enhancer at the beginning of the season is key to not having to be brushing algae in 100-degree weather. So you can use a PoolRx in April or May. You can put borates to 50 parts per million. You can use a combination of phosphate remover and enzymes. Whatever your particular choice is. Some people like using a polyquat algicide, but your number one goal is to prevent that pool from having algae in the summertime, so you're not out there brushing it. You want to make sure you maintain a high chlorine level. Now, a lot of people will keep the chlorine level at 5 to 10 parts per million in the peak of summer, and I agree that's a pretty good level to keep it at, and I think it's a way to prevent the pool from zeroing out. If a customer has a party, they should let you know. So that's also something you should communicate to your customer, that if you're going to have a party, make sure that you let me know so that I can actually shock the pool and add some more chlorine so that, it's not going to zero out. Sometimes you want to leave chlorine with the customer, a bag of shock to throw in the pool when the party's over. Whatever you can do to prevent an incident, like getting to the pool the following week, realizing they had 20 people in there and the chlorine zeroed out, now the pool's full of algae. So preventative maintenance or preventative communication is really important. Preventative maintenance would be adding an enhancer, making sure the chlorine level is at a high level, using non-chlorine shock when you need to. You're going to be going through a lot more chemicals in the summer, and really a lot of that is insurance. And so if the pool's at 3 parts per million and you leave it at that and it's 110 degrees out, chances are the following week you're going to have algae. So bring that chlorine level up, shock the pool, bring it up, give yourself a little bit of insurance. Now, Bob Lowry has a formula, and this is really important too in the summer, and it's not something to be ignored out there, that your free chlorine level should be 7.5% of your cyanuric acid level. And I've gone through this a lot in podcasts with the math, but it's really simple math, and you can do it on your phone calculator. If the cyanuric acid level at the surface count you're at is at 100 parts per million, just times that by 7.5%. Now, by the way, if you're using an enhancer like borates or PoolRx or maybe even an enzyme and a phosphate, then you can do 5%. I think Bob Lowry had the 5% formula for borates, but I think you can extend that formula to any kind of chlorine enhancer that you're using at that point. But regardless, if you just want to go off the straight 7.5%, if the cyanuric acid is at 100, you're going to need 8 parts per million of free chlorine in that pool to prevent algae from forming. So use this formula as a way to calculate the free chlorine level of the pool so that you prevent the chlorine from being ineffective at having algae form. The algae is not actually chlorine resistant. The chlorine is less effective at a higher cyanuric acid level, meaning the algae has a time to get a foothold in there. And again, the enhancers are a great way to prevent yourself from spending so much time out there brushing the pool. And it's one of the things that is going to slow you down tremendously. If you have 3 pools that day that have algae outbreaks, it's going to pretty much kill you in this kind of weather. So prevent that. Prevent the algae by, of course, having a clean filter at the beginning of the season, making sure the customer lets you know when there's a party. Really educate the customer of how to use their pump and their system. If they turn it off, turn it back on. If they put it in spa mode, put it back in pool mode. All these things are important to communicate to the customer so that you can avoid wasting time out there. And that's the key. Any wasted time out there is going to make you get home later in the day, and it's going to get hotter every hour of the day. And so speed is of the essence, and you want to get to the pools as quickly as possible and avoid any kind of problems like these out there. You may also want to do some maintenance on your salt cells before the hot season. And usually when I clean the filters in April, I'll actually take the salt cell off and give it an acid bath and clean it to make sure that it's ready for at least 2 or 3 months into the season. Because the last thing you want to be doing is get to a pool, see the salt system, the salt cell light is flashing, indicating you have to clean the cell. This is something that's going to take some time. Sometimes you're struggling because the sun is beating down on the equipment at that moment. So again, try to have all of these kind of little maintenance things out of the way before the peak of the season. And sometimes it's unavoidable. You have to clean the salt cell, in the middle of August. But if you can do these things before the season starts, you're not doing these things during the heat wave, it's going to go a long way. And you want to make sure that the automatic cleaners are all functioning as well. So I'll usually make sure that in April or May here, it's not quite that hot yet, that if the cleaner needs parts or needs something, that I can change those right away. I also carry a bunch of spare parts, and I like to, of course, fix the cleaners on the spot to get them working again. But let's say you have a Hayward Navigator and it's not working and it's really too hot to rebuild it. I always carry a spare cleaner in my truck. I have a Zodiac Ranger that I carry. And what I'll do is if I have a Hayward Navigator that's not working, I'm not going to take the time in 100-degree weather to rebuild it, even if I have the parts in my truck. I'll just throw I'll just take the Ranger back there, connect it to the hoses, and let it run during the week. I'll take the Navigator back, and then in the evening, I'll actually change the parts out or on the weekend and bring it back and put it in there. Again, every little thing like this saves you out there. You don't want to be spending 15 minutes taking apart the Navigator and changing parts. Just have a spare cleaner in your truck, or even 2 spare cleaners, and always have plenty of spare parts for the cleaner so that if you have time to rebuild it, you can. But in really hot weather, I don't bother doing that. I'll just swap it out with something else. And of course, there's always things that happen that are going to slow you down. But it's one of those things where if you can avoid the majority of the preventable things that slow you down out there, the better it is for you to get through the day. The bottom line is you want to do whatever you can to speed up your day out there, whether using test strips, avoiding any kind of extra work with algae, and you want to get home before it gets really hot out there. And you're not doing anything extra at that point for the customer. You're just doing the minimal because it is really dangerous out there. Usually there's a heat advisory, and so you can point to that to the customer. If they're like, hey, I noticed you didn't vacuum the pool. Well, yeah, there's a heat advisory, so I have to do the minimum. And most customers really, to be honest with you, don't care. They respect you and they want you to be safe out there. And nobody wants you to have heat stroke at their pool. And most customers, again, aren't even going back there in this kind of weather. You know, most people avoid the hottest point of the day anyway. And some people don't even go in their backyard for a week when it's this hot. It's too hot in most cases to even use their pool. And so don't worry too much about it. And just do the best you can to get through that pool and get out of there and get home before it gets way too hot. If you're looking for other podcasts, you can find those, of course, by subscribing to my YouTube channel Monday through Friday. And I also have them posted on my website. If you go there, click on the podcast icon, there'll be a drop-down menu with over 1,700 podcasts for you there. And if you're interested in the coaching program, you can learn more at poolguycoaching.com. Thanks for listening to this podcast. Have a great rest of your week. God bless. This episode is brought to you by HASA, providing products that deliver clean, healthy water for every aspect of everyday life. The bottom feeder battery-powered vacuum system, portable, powerful, and only weighs 12 pounds. And Skimmer. Get Skimmer, America's #1 pool service software. Podcast listeners can try Skimmer for free at getskimmer.com/poolguy.